Before we get started, just want to show of hands how everyone heard of us. If you heard of us by flyer, can you raise your hand really quickly? Oh, nice. Very cool. If you heard by email, can you raise your hand? All right. Facebook? Next door? And then did your neighbor tell you about it? Oh, very nice. Cool. Thank you, everybody. So our goal here tonight, we want to inform LuxLiving of the community's needs and concerns in order to better serve the neighborhood. We have Chris here tonight presenting on the behalf of LuxLiving. He'll run through that presentation. And we'll have a Q&A and discussion afterwards. I'll jump into the agenda here in a second. Let me admit a few more people into the meeting. The agenda. So we'll do some introductions. The board will introduce itself, the neighborhood association, a quick history of the site. We'll cover some expectations and a really brief timeline. We'll jump into the presentation itself, hosted by Chris. We'll have a Q&A afterwards. We'll discuss our thoughts and opinions on things, and then I'll share some next steps. Still admitting people. There we go. All right, some introductions. So you're here tonight at the Forest Park Southeast Neighborhood Association meeting. Within our bylaws, we are to provide a neutral forum for discussion or a place where information can be distributed, discussed, and then concerns collected and communicated back to our elected officials, just like Alderwoman Sweetsy here tonight. We're here to serve as a mechanism for creating and fostering community, and then to encourage and provide tools for residents in the neighborhood to play an active role in which they live. Brief introductions. I'll introduce myself. My name is Dan Doling. I'm the president of the Neighborhood Association. I live on 1300 block of Kentucky. Brian, if you'd like to introduce yourself really quickly.
Hi guys, I'm Brian. I'm the vice president. I'm on the board of compliance system, and I can see so many provisions here tonight.
And then Xavier Woodson is not here tonight. He is our member at large. He lives on the 4400 block of Manchester. I don't have a password. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Can you talk to him? Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. Jumping into introducing Chris. Chris is here on the behalf of LuxLiving. Chris, if you'd just like to introduce yourself, make sure you speak up so everyone can hear you really quickly.
So I'm with Forestry Partners, which is my little business, and our goal is to go around providing developers and making sure the project's fitting well with neighborhoods. If you engage the community, then you can't have city development without community engagement. That's my goal here is to incorporate as many of your comments as possible with your feedback. I will then send it back to LuxLiving. I saw a completion estimate, the second, third, and so I'm just going to So we're here in St. Louis doing about 1,500. These people with this company comes into neighborhoods with the intention of wanting to invest and create a stronger community. This was seen in our workplace about 15 years. They came into this neighborhood for this neighborhood development.
Give me 1 second.
You
So I
just
can
want
just-
to hold that while you're talking.
I don't want to scream into it. Is it so I can just.
I'll stand there. Yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure that people on Zoom can hear you. Yeah.
So, I'm with LuxLiving, as I said. So they go back to the developer place story. They went into it back when it wasn't the best neighborhood to live in on all those apartment buildings on Church. They went in, they started out with a 4-family building on Pershing, and it slowly grew into what that street is today. And other developers came in and capitalized off of that success as well. So, after all renovating most of those buildings and having others come in, they built the Tribeca, which was their first ground up building. So there were going to be some issues with that building. Then they're just wrapped up Chelsea now. It's 100%, and now they're doing Hudson, which they just started welcoming their first residents a few weeks ago. Not 100% finished yet, but should be very soon. The Chelsea and Hudson are very similar. Those two are very similar in terms of quality and amenities that I'll talk about later here at the project here in Forest Park Southeast. They're also a similar scale to this. The Soho is the biggest. So, the Soho is the biggest apartment project yet by Lux, by far. It's 320 something units. It's being built at Soulard by Park Avenue. About a block north of the Soulard Market. That's a big project. If you've gone down there recently, you've seen that. And then they just began a project at 170 in Belmont, University City, called the Mackenzie. And that's, I think, about 200 apartments or so. I don't know too many details about that project. I have been informed much about this. So I apologize. Okay. And then the Optimist site, that's still under review, and it's going through a redesign process because it went through cultural resources about a month ago, and the preservation board denied the project. So back to the drawing board. So I'll be involved in that. We're going to try and make a project that's really beneficial to the Central West End. Like that, and this, neither is seeking incentives, but I'll get into that later. But for now, I think that covers the introduction for me. So,
The people on Zoom, can you quickly re-indicate yourself?
yeah, let me.
You're fine with what, you can leave that there, just go back to the slide. Thank you.
All right, so my name is Chris Stritzel. I'm with Forestry Partners, which is my own little company, organization, whatever you like to call it, that advises developers on their projects to make them the best possible things they could be for a neighborhood. That's right. So yeah, I go through and I advise developers of what's going on in St. Louis, and Lux isn't the only one I'm working with. I should have mentioned that. There's 3 others that I'm currently working with to make their projects the best possible. And my job is to really come out here and engage with the public, engage with the neighbors, to make sure that this process is as it should be, which is community development. It's gonna be in your backyards for some of you. There needs to be engagement with this. That's how you be a good neighbor. So that's my whole intention of being here, and I look forward to hearing everybody's feedback and answering as many questions as I can. So thank you.
All right. Yeah, we're gonna get sorry to everyone on Zoom. We'll get a microphone here set up so the audio quality should improve. Once that is set up, I'll do a brief history of the site. But for the moment, just stay paused. We'll get to you in a second. Yeah, I was telling the people on Zoom to be patient as we get a mic set up.
Hello.
Okay, so we'll have a mic for when Chris is presenting, so you guys can all hear him. Really quickly, I'll go through the site history. So where LuxLiving is proposing their development is along the Kings Highway, former Drury properties, right there pictured. Back in 2007, Drury was acquiring properties, and in 2008, they proposed the 2 tower high rises you see there on the left. The community shot that down. Come back about a decade later, another proposal came about through RFP, an RFQ, and Drury came back with wanting to re-engage the community in that. COVID happened, they reverted to selling a lot of their properties. They came on market, and then LuxLiving acquired several parcels, including the Kings Highway parcels you see right there, along with some properties on Arco and Oakland. All the other Drury properties, I believe, were sold to other people, not LuxLiving. Jumping into expectations and then the timeline. Expectations for today's meeting. Let's be respectful of each other and today's presenter. Let's listen, ask, and discuss. And then as Chris is going through his presentation, we ask you to think about your experience in the neighborhood as it relates to this project throughout its lifetime. Some questions to think when Chris is presenting here. How will my experience of the neighborhood be affected? And then what changes can we request to ensure our experiences are positive throughout the life of this project? And then I believe timeline. So today, Chris is presenting. We'll listen, ask, and discuss our experiences. In October, we plan to have a second meeting to kind of formalize those experiences that we're having and the requested changes that we want to see. And then ideally, maybe in November, we provide to Alderwoman Sweetie and LuxLiving some suggestions on for Sweetie on how to incorporate that community feedback. So before we get started, does anybody have any questions? All right. I'm seeing that on Zoom. Are we still on the first slide, or can you guys see my slides?
It looks like we're on the first slide.
Are we? Really? Oh shoot. One sec. Oh, thank you. Why is my screen sharing? 1 second, guys.
To neighbors, people in the neighborhood complaining about being completely blocked off from Forest Park. So as you see, they were responsive to a certain extent. And what really shut them down the first time was the recession in the whatever that was, 2008. And then they came back again and tried, and there were other issues. But just, I think it's relevant to the current proposal as I've seen it, that a lot of people really hated that solid block. Not that I recall. I don't think that's.
Really acceptable to the large majority of the residents.
Especially the ones on Soho,
I'm sorry to shut down the discussion, but we're here to talk about LuxLiving tonight. Sorry for bringing up that slide. I know it's a hot topic. Before we move on, do we have any questions about what's upcoming before I hand it over to Chris?
Yeah, I do have a question. I just want to confirm what I'm understanding. So they purchased the property and this is to determine how it can be used, how it can be put in.
We can ask Chris these questions. After he presents his proposal, I think it'll clear up a lot of things. Can we use the mic? Yeah. Can we have her mic?
We talked to Oakland and Soho area that they just straight gave up on. Whoever run that property right there, they just like been told the people that's been there for over 30 years, like really telling us to get out. Who do we talk to? But me myself, I would love to have my money back. Y'all, they got us living in unconditional filth up in that area, 4500 area, Oakland and Arthur. Who do we really talk to? That's the question I want to know. I need answers.
What are the specific properties?
45, 45, 60, Oakland, and you 45, 68 Park.
We've been I know
She's been at her place 13 years. And we've been up in that area for 6 years.
Well, 6 years now, but I've been over in this area over 30 years.
But we can't get any answers from DD2 LLC. Like the phone number, the email, no responses to anything being fixed, or none of that.
Okay, we can take note of that and talk to you afterwards, okay? I'm not, if it's DD2, that's former jury property, it sounds like. But it,
Yeah,
okay,
we're resolved that.
yeah, so it's a LuxLiving property at the moment.
So you're asking about being like pushed out of your properties from this project? Only, yeah, so only 1070 to 1092 South Kings Highway. I think it's 7 buildings between Oakland and Arco, from the alley to Kings Highway. That's, yeah, those are going to, but none where you live is not going to be touched. Nothing's going to.
If I may, the issue here is that when LuxLiving bought Drew's properties, they bought the properties along Kings Highway, but they also bought about 4 or 5 properties deep back onto Arco and Oakland Elevation. This is where these individuals live. They are talking about issues that they're having with their building. They've tried to get in contact with LuxLiving and have not been able to get in touch with the ongoing issues in their building. They're asking, who can they talk to tonight in regards to those issues that they have with their current neighbor, who is also the developer. To be clear, we did ask the developers to be here tonight. They declined. We will require them to be at the meeting in October. Right now, the representative we have is Chris. Chris will take all information tonight and he will communicate with the developers. We also have an employee from LuxLiving here, Julie, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name. Brady. And you can talk to her about the issues you're having as well. So we will have time after the meeting where you guys can talk.
Any more questions before we get started here? Can everyone on Zoom see my screen? Can't tell. Yes, great, thank you. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Chris. Chris will be on the microphone. Let's wait until we have, wait to ask questions until the end of the presentation. I'm happy to go back to previous slides. But for right now, I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Thank you. So I'm here to present this project at Kings Highway, Oakland. As I said before, the address is 1070 to 1092 South Kings Highway. So 1070 to 1092 South Kings Highway. You know, as we just went through, yeah, we can go to the next. So here's the site currently. So I'll go through this. And we have some pictures for those who are not familiar with the site. So it's 7 buildings. There are 6 4-family buildings and 1 single-family building here along this stretch of between Oakland and Harbor. 6 of the 7 buildings are in significant decline because of what Drury once did. With their intentions, and they held on to them for 20 years, what you see is a result of that by that previous owner. Not being able to Drury or anything, but that was a mistake on their part. The backside of one of the properties has fallen off. If you live around there, I'm sure you've seen that. We've gone through the alley. I think it's 1092. The backside fell off that property. Others have roofs that are caving in. Some have no grout between the bricks, so they're just sort of teetering. They're balancing on each other, and the weight of the building is allowing those not to collapse yet. There are weeds growing in the gangways and the cracks of the buildings, and there's also weeds growing in the parking lot. So overall, it's making those properties really.
All right, we're having trouble again. Can you
Okay, so, all right. So like I said, the back parking lot has, grass growing where asphalt and gravel used to be, and it's just not making the neighborhood look good at all, especially after all the work that has been done here over the past several years. These properties are not a good look to the neighborhood, especially when you got to city's busiest street from our busiest highway, right there at 64 McCain's Highway. This isn't a welcome sight to see in the neighborhood that I know so many people love. We could go to the next. So here's some pictures from a few weeks ago showing what I mean by the backside falling off of the one building and then just the general appearance of these buildings. You could see in this this middle picture, you can see some of the weeds growing up behind that black wall. That's common in between each one of these buildings. And for some of these weeds are not that you can just chop down with a lawnmower or weed whacker. These are trees growing now. They've been growing that long by now. This situation over here is similar. In this building, actually on the end during the 4th of July, there were a series of people in here launching fireworks out for them. So afterwards, they went in there and they found a whole bunch of brand new firework trash in it that wasn't there before. So they're having people in these buildings, and that's making it a big safety hazard because if these buildings collapse, there's a chance people could lose their lives, and that's nobody's intention here. It's really nobody's. But people are getting into these buildings, and they're just not what you want. I'm also aware from being told by a few people that there have been car meets on this back parking lot, like the same speed racers that people deal with on all the major north-south streets here in St. Louis. They met on this back lot. That's not something you want in your neighborhood. We can go on to the next slide. So the proposal calls for the demolition of all those buildings, and then it calls for the construction of a new 6-story apartment building with 144 apartments. You can see the breakdown there: 32 studio, 101 one-bedrooms, and 11 two-bedroom units. All the apartments include some form of space that allows you to go outside. So you have a recessed balcony, a protruding balcony, or a Juliet balcony. Excuse me. And then there's a deed restriction on the property right now that prevents any Airbnb units from being built here or operated by either the building owner or tenants. So you can't do that, and you can't build a hotel here. So there's going to be none of that here. So everybody who lives here will live here, and there won't be any of these rental units here. I can guarantee that. There's 144 parking spaces, so it's a 1-to-1 parking ratio, and that garage is accessed through the alley because of the form-based code rules. However, we have an alternative where we could move and have to request to do this, but we could move the closure on Oakland back to the alley. So then all traffic to the garage would come in and out of Kings Highway, but it wouldn't go through the neighborhood. So that's something that we would have to discuss about, and I think would go through like the alderwoman and some of the others around here to discuss. I'll have to research that one a little bit, but I know it's been considered. But under that option, the whole alley situation would be changed. So residents who live back up in that alley, or on Oakland or Arco, who use that alley, could no longer go down and just turn. There'd be a whole new alley built like this around it, because we just have a driveway more or less to this garage from Oakland, where the alley currently is. So everything would have to be changed quite significantly back there with that plan. So the building is stepped. And the intention with that is to keep the tallest portion along Kings Highway the furthest away from the homes and step down to a single story at the northeast corner of Arco in the alley. So that way you soften it with the neighborhood. So you keep the tall part up against Kings Highway, and everything that's next to the neighboring buildings is more in line with the massing that you would see back there. So the design team, fortunately, the architect couldn't be here tonight. He's dealing with COVID issues. But it's VE Design Group and the Burkhart Elliott Creative, both of those firms from Springfield, so Springfield, Missouri. And the developer, of course, is LuxLiving, which is based in the Central West End. We can go on. So here's some of the form-based code rules that we were able to adopt here. It falls within the neighborhood core rules, and looking at the map, neighborhood core goes from about 64 to Swan and then back a couple parcels. So it's just facing Kings Highway. This also falls within the podium building rules. So we have to listen to these two rules, which then come to the third point, which is the materials that are allowed to be used here. We're going to be cladding this building in brick, metal panels, and curtain wall glazing. All three of those are allowed. We're not going to use hardy board here, or we're not going to use stucco here. So these are going to be higher quality materials, and then some other materials that have been put on buildings in the neighborhood in the past couple of years. The parking garage entrance, like I said, is off of the alley. Instead of a major street like Kings Highway or a secondary street like Arco or Oakland, which would have required a variance for form-based code. All the parking is underground too. So there's not going to be 2 levels of above ground parking that you'll be able to see. When you enter the garage entrance, you'll go down a level. So it's all below grade parking. I think, if I remember correctly, there's going to be a 25-foot deep hole dug first before this project comes out of the ground. So like I said, no variances are being requested, and no tax incentives are being sought. And that's a big thing here, because as many of you know who follow development, so many projects have been proposed and built in the city in the past several years that require incentives, including in this neighborhood. It's now at that point where those are not needed anymore. The rents are at that level where you don't need incentives. Property values are at that level. So this will be something new in a way, so it's no incentives. So it immediately adds to the tax base in the city, to the schools, public safety, infrastructure, all that good stuff that we care so much about. So here's a site plan. Letter A is the whole lobby space. So the lobby space will include a bistro, which if any of you have been to Chelsea, which is another one of Lux's projects in Canada, we invite you to tour it. But the bistro is sort of like a coffee shop, little sandwich place where you get little breakfast things. And there'll be interior seating, and then out here on this B space, which is the courtyard, there'll be outdoor seating for that bistro. So you'll be able to go there, and I think it's open until a little bit after lunch, like breakfast and lunch. It won't be open all the time, but it will be open between those hours. The rest of the space will be the lobby. There'll be the building maintenance office, and then you'll have the fitness center. All this will have, you'll see in the elevations, a wall of windows along that first floor along Kings Highway. So there's going to be no blank walls along Kings Highway. It's not good urbanism at all. So the main entrance to the building will be off of Kings Highway, like I think a little bit to the top of the courtyard. So everything's right there. All the activity will be focused right there. And then C and D. So D is actually the property line, and then C, that's the garage entrance. So you can see how it comes right off the alley and you go immediately down. If we move the Oakland closure back to the alley, back a little bit more, and then where that one grassy strip is, where the C is, like that area, that would become the one new alley entrance and exit. And the one on the north of the alley, there will remain. So one new alley would have to be built because the current one would become a driveway if we remove the Oakland closure up to the alley. All right. So this is a elevation Kings Highway. So this is right across the street from it. So you can see all the glass on the first floor, and that's intentional along with the courtyard space. Things up above, how they're recessed or protruding. And the hope is with this, it makes the building look busier because people have their deck furniture out. Some people may have a flag or something out on their balcony. So it'll make this view more colorful is the hope, right? And you have people sitting out there in the heat of meets. So you have more people eyeing on the street, keeping an eye on things. So you can see where all the materials are. A is gray brick. So that gray brick is only on like the first level. Right? That's a street level. And then above that's all metal panel, whether it's gray or black. And then the windows are black frame. This is standard stuff. We can go on to the next one. So this is the Oakland elevation. So we kept the wall of glass in the first floor up about for the first third of this elevation. Then after that,
These walls will have significant landscaping along them to help them blend in a bit better. So, like it's not just gonna be basic trees and bushes, there'll be much more lush landscaping than that. Just, this is what the rendering software can do. We can go into, oh, well, first you can see the first step, about 3.5 floors. And then if we go to the next one, you can see how it steps down again, the remaining blades. So along the alley here, you can see the garage entrance on the left side. All this glass on the first floor will be alley facing units at that level. So we didn't just want to make this a blank wall on that first level. We wanted to have some sort of activity down. So every one of those units faces out to the alley. So it's not just a blank wall. The first step on the right, you see that's the pool deck. And then behind that will be poolside amenity space, like a game room or something. The second deck will be a sun deck, and then maybe we can connect to that yet, we're not 100% sure. But for now, it's just the sun deck. We can move on to the next. And then this is the Argo side. So again, for about a third, there's some glass there, and then landscaping after that. And then you can see the pool deck here. All right, next slide. And then these are elevations and context. It's very faint, but there's some faint lines around on the left and right side of these images. I don't know if this isn't, but those are about the massing of the neighboring buildings. So when you're looking at this, you can see like this middle one here, that's Argo. You can see the houses at the alley right there, how the top of those homes will be slightly taller than the pool deck on this building. And then on the other side, it'll be about 1.5 floors taller than those units. All right, next one. So yeah, that's all I have to say about the proposal as presented here this evening. And I'm open for questions if you have them. I'll go.
Okay, so my question, Eric,
Wait 1 second. We'll be taking questions in the chat and in person here. We're going to start in person, but if you have questions, enter them in the chat, and then we will ask them to Chris. We are going to start here in person here in just 1 moment.
Okay, my name is Mary. I live on Kings Highway, across the street. My question is, where's visitor parking? Is there enough spaces in the underground parking that you'll have visitor parking below ground, or where's it going to be?
So right now,
Here.
It's gonna be all slow.
So right now, there is no visitor parking in this building or in any of the surrounding things. There is an alternative plan that we have where about 1/4 of the first floor of the building is turned into visitor parking and short term for like deliveries or Ubers and things. So we could consider that too. Just the glazing along Kings Highway's first floor won't be as much as it is. So it'll be at that one corner, and from there, cars would enter still from the alley just through a driveway that doesn't go down. So we can include visitor parking, short-term parking, but in the current plans that you just saw, there is none.
Sean, just wondering about the property that is north of the area that you are developing. Who owns that, and what do you have any ideas on how you might expand, or I mean, what is going to happen there?
So not, so the parcel just north of Arco, like across the street? Because I don't know who owns it. If it is Lux, I'm not 100% sure. I haven't checked the parcel ownership, but I think Drury still owns a few in the neighborhood. I don't know what they intend to do there. As far as parcels Lux owns behind the site, there's no intention to develop those right now. So that's something else that we're looking into to do. I don't know what they're gonna do there. I haven't been informed on that yet. So I'm sorry if I can't answer that question. That's all the information I have on that.
Thanks. My name's Catherine. I am a long-term, 40-year resident of Forest Park Southeast.
and a 30-year homeowner on Arco 4500 block. My main concern, which is exactly the same as it was with Drury, is if you're going to have parking off of the alley, how are those cars going to get to the alley? Because if they're coming down Arco, I am not in favor.
Can we go back to the site plan slide? Okay. So right now, the way it is cars would either come down Oakland or Arco to enter the garage, which I know, I was emailed by a few people that concern, and I addressed it. But we can move the Oakland closure that's at Kings Highway back to the alley. So that way, none of the residents would come through the neighborhood. So be in and out from Kings Highway, Oakland to the alley. In that case, there would be like a concrete curb built right there at the alley, but the new alley would be built on this thin grassy strip down to Oakland. So residents could come down Oakland and turn into the alley, but the residents to this building would enter off of Kings Highway onto Oakland and in the alley. So that's the option. But as shown here, residents of this building would come through the neighborhood and come down Oakland or Arco, pull in and park that way.
Yeah, can you understand how that would be
Yeah.
completely unappealing? This is a quiet residential neighborhood.
So
That was actually my question, because we also live on 4500 Arco, we play in that alley every night. And then I guess the question I had, based on the change that you're suggesting, if you were to move the closure down the block to allow access off of Kings Highway, what does that do for the Oakland Avenue alley access if the closure is moved back? And then I guess, yeah,
So the alley access for Oakland residents would be retained, just there'd be a new alley built right next to the current one. So there'd be like two alleys next to each other. So where letter D and C is on this, the circles, there'd be a new alley built on that thin grass strip. And then, and then the current one would remain.
the other question is, if you're allocating one parking spot per unit, what do people with two vehicles do? Are they parking them in the already clogged out streets?
So that's something that Lux has been asked a lot in the DeBoliver Place neighborhood because it's a very valid question. So within this case, not all residents have cars, so it's more of a case by case thing. So if you have two cars, Lux is expected to tell them, well, we'll keep you on a list, and if a parking space becomes available, we'll do it. But initially, they will be parking on the neighborhood streets, which I know is a concern.
It's just not gonna be feasible, given that you already have all the watching parking that happens in the neighborhood. And at the end of the night, now that most of the houses in the neighborhood are not abandoned, the street parking is actually pretty full at night. So, yeah, on both streets. Yeah, so during the day it's full, and during the night it's full now, so that's just a consideration.
Yeah, I'll be right with you. He's next, and then I'll get to you. Okay.
Hey, thanks. My name's Aaron. I'm on the 4400 block of Shoto, so close, but not as close as some of y'all. I wonder if we might request maybe something in some of our upcoming meetings. I think the topic of parking and traffic does seem like a really critical issue, especially as it relates to the site plan and the community. Would it be reasonable to ask Lux to come back with a much more detailed traffic analysis and study, maybe by a traffic engineer or something of the sorts? It seems to me like that's reasonable due diligence, and would be great content in a much more detailed fashion than a simple block site plan. I wonder if that might help facilitate a much better conversation, because it seems still so vague, and I think that might be worth requesting from us.
So she just said we already did it, so we can provide that. Yeah, we just don't have it on us right now. So
does that imply that what this plan currently shows is the recommendation of the traffic engineers?
to my understanding, to the architects, then it would be a yes.
Plus surrounding areas like including Science Center, Forest Park, the additional local traffic that would come in is possible not to have dinner for their friends who agree to pool. What about all this?
I'll have to ask about that to get the full details.
Okay, you said I'm at 4500 block of Orco. I'm at 4500 block of Orco in the area where we're having our situation. Now, you said you all are gonna try to push the alley back, but we park in the back because it's an open space. So if you all do that, what would that do for us? Where would we park it?
Well, I don't think your parking would be affected at all, because if you're parking right behind your 3 buildings, that's okay. If you're parking in this grassy lot on the end, that's where some of the issues are going to arise, because that's where the alley would be built. If under the alternative plan that I'm talking about, so if you're parking behind your buildings, you should remain, your parking will remain. I'm guaranteeing that. Just if you park on the side and the grassy spaces alongside of the house next to the alley, that's where you're gonna lose parking, is if you're parking in the grassy spaces.
You're good. Hi, my name is Lindsay. I live on Gibson. As is common in up and coming neighborhoods, the question of development is always a big thing. So I'm curious, like, are you planning to do any low income or mixed income apartments in that building? Or is it for only like folks who can afford that? Because we don't want to push out folks who are here. So what is your plan for the fact that this community is a mixed income community? And not everyone can afford who currently lives here to stay in here. So, yep.
So on that question, there will be no affordable housing here or workforce housing. We're not seeking incentives, so we don't feel like we have to do any of that. If we sought incentives, we would feel different. But because we're not seeking it, we're not going to build any.
What's their target rent?
I haven't gotten that yet. I don't think we're that far in the process yet. As far as what the rent is, I know it's gonna be market rate.
Just to pick up a little bit on what I said before, is it possible that the property north of your site could be in some way used for parking, for instance, visitor parking? Has that been considered?
So just north of Arco again? So like just out of view of this? I don't know who owns that. If we own it, I think it can be looked into. Yeah, so I don't think we own that. I don't think Lux owns that. And I can check for sure. I don't think we own that. If we did, we could look into it, but if there's somebody living in it, I don't think it would be a good idea to, we're gonna wreck your house for a parking lot. It just doesn't sound very nice at all. All right.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I live on the 4500 block of Arco. My question is, what is your long-term plan for management of this site? Because I know that for other buildings, you have sold off after you built.
So the thing about this, so it goes back to, I think some of you may have seen the next STL story that was written in the past day or two. The thing with that is the property management prior to Lux selling the properties was much higher than what it was afterwards. So reviews on Tribeca and Steelyard, when you look at it before the properties were sold, were much higher because the property management kept up. Additionally, there were issues with those buildings, and I've been told by Lux to say we own those because those were the first buildings that they built under their fully connected system where they have builder with the developer. So those did have issues. Since then, those issues have been addressed. As far as the management goes, it's as long as we can possibly get it for. Because there are out-of-state investors coming in who want to buy the buildings for a much higher rate. So in a way, if somebody comes in offering all this extra money for a building, you would want to sell it because that's how you keep your business rolling, and that's how business works. So if you don't
sell these properties, make money, keep going to other things, and there's no reason in doing any type of development. Just like home builders are not just gonna build a house, break even and call it a day. So it's a very similar model to that. So that's that problem right there. It ranges. It ranges on if somebody comes up and, you know, we build these units for $250,000 a unit and they want to buy it for $325,000. I think if that was in the first year after being sold or bought, maybe they'd sell it then, but I doubt that. Some of these new projects that they're building are supposed to be long-term holds. This, I expect to be one of them. I haven't checked on that yet, though. Well, this would be improving. This would be improving the neighborhood. This would, well, okay, then what would you prefer? Would you like these empty buildings or would you like something new, whether it's owned by us or not? So that's the main thing. Huh? It doesn't economically work. You have to think at it in different ways. If you want to seek out a project that's shorter, everybody here had the opportunity to buy those properties previously. All right, Drury had them up for sale quietly for many, many years. Anybody could have went up and bought them and renovated those buildings. Additionally, if we wanted to build a 3-story building here, we need to get a lot of incentives because the property values that we bought them at in the rec, and to build something new, we cannot get the rent that we need to make the numbers work. So that's the issue what we have right now, right? I would be fine if a 3-floor building was built. I think everybody would, but it doesn't make economic sense at this point in time, despite the rents being able to make sense for a taller building. Who raised their hand over here?
Hi, my name is Myron, and this is where we live on Kings Highway in Oakland, right on the corner. And I'd just like to know, I guess it would be your name, Chris, later, because I have questions. Because we have problems already with people coming through our property, you know, from Kings Highway in Oakland and what. So I can imagine what it's going to be like when they start, you know, if they started building this and how it's going to affect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also when they start building, you know, the home is over 100 years old, so they started digging and, you know, sort of moving around things underground, you know.
So under the topic of construction of how this would work is initially a retaining wall would be driven into the outer surrounding of the site. So anything past that wall will be held up as it goes down. So you're digging a hole and you're building a wall as you go down. So everything should be that way. Also, the utilities will be moved prior to any construction starting. So that'd be really the first part of construction, if you will, where a mess will come up, where they'll come through with their metal plates and they'll cut the street and they'll move water lines and things around to, you know, allow this development to happen. I think the way they do that, I don't have the construction guy here tonight. He could explain this better than me, but I don't think that means they're going to lose any services. Like they'll do it and then, okay, time to connect it up. They'll just connect you up within a few minutes and be done with that. I think that's how that will work out for construction. Yeah, I mean, those will be addressed, and that's more of a thing for Sid. He's not here. I can't. That's outside of my thing that I know. But yeah, I'll be right back.
Hi, my name's Lulu. I live on the 4500 block of Arco. And I previously lived in a building that was operated by LuxLiving, previously called Asprient, then Citywide, now LuxLiving. So is LuxLiving going to be doing the management of the building after it's built as well, or will that go to a separate company? Yes, okay. And then my follow-up to that question is, you know, the track record of Asprient and Citywide and I guess now LuxLiving has not been that great in terms of the property management. You know, even when I lived in that building, it was neglected, things were not addressed, and I just feel like they didn't have very good stewardship of the building. So, you know, like I'm kind of concerned about this new building. Are they gonna take care of it? Are they gonna take care of the tenants? Are they gonna take care of the tenants that are already living in properties that apparently that they own. So what's, what are they doing? Have they shown any improvements? Have they addressed any of the issues in the buildings that they already own to show us like that they have good intentions?
Yeah, Julie is the one to answer this question for you, because she's all about this.
Hi, I'm Julie. So first thing that needs to be considered is Aspirant is no longer. There is a division of us called Citywide. There was a division of us called LuxLiving. The LuxLiving is our development company, building new construction. Citywide is some of the older buildings where we have residents in. So they are two separate entities, and the offering is two separate offerings. So people pay a higher rent to live at a luxury building than they do at the other properties. Now, that being said, I don't know what property you lived at, but I know on the hit piece that Michael wrote the other day about our property, he took a number of negative reviews, none of the positive reviews. I was mentioning a number of the positive reviews personally.
Don't you incentivize positive reviews though?
No, not at all. Never once.
That's not true. You do
Tell me
offer
what.
gift cards in exchange for positive reviews, correct?
But I've never given a gift card.
It wasn't a hit piece. It was reporting the facts, and you are free to refute any of the things that were said in that piece.
I would love to. Okay, but anyway, I don't know what building you lived in. Yeah, I don't know which building she lived in, which is okay. But I will tell you, like, huh? I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I will. We have taken a number of steps in each side of our business that address these things. So the luxury side is handled much differently. And we are much quicker to respond. The maintenance side, we're still rounding out and figuring out how to make that work and how to address things better and quicker. But they are two separate entities. I don't know if that answers your question. So Park Lux, or Park Lane, or we called it Park Lane, yeah. And when did you live there? Okay, so I think even since then, we've made a number of renovations to there. There's been a number of project units there. It didn't, yeah, I mean, it didn't, I mean, that's such a, I mean, I'm not gonna argue, yes, bricks came off of the building and it was a structural collapse, yes. So. Which ones? Well, that's what I was trying to find out the answer to. I'm not positive that we owned those, so. We do. Okay. Well, I just got her information literally just a second ago, and I will make that happen. Yes.
Those properties that you're talking about, those are not even listed on anything right now, because right now they could be sold to somebody else. We're sold to the owners who live there right now. That's the whole goal right now. Yes.
Thank you. Could someone from the neighborhood association confirm to us, is this indeed a project that does not require any variances? Is this a by right project?
But no, has not had any contact from the developer about pursuing incentives. LCRA is not expecting to get a request for incentives. So yes, this would be a project that they are doing themselves.
So would we be able to confirm that prior to the next meeting?
I think that we should do that, yes. And as far as they're currently saying that they're not requesting any, but then some of the plans.
That's their, right, that's their word.
Right, yeah, I think we need a final confirmed plan. I think that we should have that after this. Yeah, so I think
I
that we.
think part of this meeting though is to get the neighborhood input to come up with a final plan, right?
Right, but if you don't require variances, you could ignore every
every single word that is said here. If you do require variances, you can set them to listen to what we have to say. So there's a big difference in terms of that element.
So at the end of the day, we want to be a part of the neighborhood. We want to be a positive impact on the neighborhoods. So regardless of that. I think
We can, if the architect was here, he'd be able to explain the form-based code thing, because he was the one who read through the entire form-based code. Who was that raising their hand over here? I'll be right with you. Yeah, take it. Oh, you have a chance.
Yeah, Bill, live on the 4500 block of Soho. How do you enforce the no Airbnb thing? Just out of curiosity, because I know when you Airbnb, it's kind of just pictures on a website. You don't get the address till the end, and I know I read the piece, whether it was called Hit Piece or whatever else, but you guys do have the Stay, which is another one of your 100 LLCs of Sid's company, and I know this. How do we know that that's not going to happen? Because I have friends, we stay at Airbnbs. It's usually a lot of people jamming into a spot. It's more than the one car. It's got the pool, it's the amenities. And I mean, it's a great spot too. I mean, you're looking for Forest Park, you've got BJC, you've got the Grove. It's a great place to put an Airbnb. How do we know it's going to be enforced?
So it's written into the deed, and that deed is with the city. So when Lux bought the properties, when they signed off on the sale, they agreed, you can't have the hearing. If you do, you could be sued. So that's number one. And then number two, it's then for residents, because then the state wouldn't be able to operate them. The residents, if a resident decided to have an Airbnb in the building, it's written into the rental agreement that they couldn't. So it would be like, if you do that, we'll be like, please take it off. And if you keep doing it, you'll be kicked out.
Is that deed transferable on sale when you guys sell the building?
Yes, the deed follows no matter how many times it's sold. So if we sell it, if it's sold 20 times, it's permanent unless the deed is completely changed. If it's changed by a future buyer, I can't guarantee that. But right now, there's no intention to change the deed.
Okay, so is there a transparency thing in that? So we would understand that, or is it just gone on sale? Like you're a private owner, they're a private buyer, they buy it, it's changed. Do you weigh that it's publicly?
I don't
Or is that
know.
just that? So if you buy property, you don't know that?
I'm not the one buying
I'm
it.
just saying, it just seems odd that you undercut like.
I don't know. Somebody could do that to us. I don't know.
Okay, so it can't be done.
It can't be done is what I'm saying.
So when you sell it, it's not guaranteed that all of that deeds are supposed to. You sell it 2 years, that becomes a hotel. 2 years.
I highly doubt that.
Okay, doubt. So it can't be
And I
done.
can say it's not gonna happen. If it happens, come see me and then I'll eat crow.
So I'm going to revisit the issue of parking. Access to. So I want to say a comment first, and I'm not saying you, Julie, because it's not, I got your, but I think it is a little disingenuous to come, first of all, to not have a developer, boo. And second of all, to not have detailed information about traffic flow and parking, because that is critical to all of us who live here in the 4500 blocks in particular. And I'm sure you're aware that the intersection at Oakland and Kings Highway is a no left turn intersection. That was a huge problem for Drury back in the day, because they did not feel like that could be, they didn't even know if the city would allow them to make that into a left turn place. So if that, I hear you saying, oh no, we can easily change it to access on Oakland. Well, are you sure about that? I have a feeling that after things, start underway, they'll say, no, I'm sorry, it really has to be on Arco or Oakland. It has to come from Taylor, which will mean a lot more traffic on our streets. I don't like that. It'll mean a lot more parking on our streets. I don't like that. And it's gonna lower our property values to have more traffic, no place for people to buy a house to park, and more general noise and people coming through the neighborhood. It's not just gonna be people who live there, it's gonna be service vehicles for the bistro, service vehicles for the pool, service vehicles for all kinds of people. These, I know I heard somebody snicker when I said this is a quiet residential area, but honest to God, it is a quiet residential area. This would take away that quietness.
Well, for making it, to address that situation,
we would have to work with the city. And if we can ever get contact with city officials, it'd be sure beneficial that we could, get this talk going about changing that whole entire intersection to allow something like that to happen. So we need feedback with the city. We need to work with the city on that. So for now, it's just, well, hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have an answer for that. But right now, I don't have it. It's what we're going to pursue based on what people were saying at tonight's meeting. We'll look into it more and more and more.
Hi, my name is Joyce, and I live in the 4500 block of Soho, and I have for like over 40 years. Apropos of you being part of the neighborhood, what consideration has been given to allowing people from the immediate neighborhood to use any of the facilities in the building for a fee? So the fitness center, the bistro, the pool, for example. I don't know what else you're going to have.
Well, the bistro will be open to the public, so anybody could come in. For the gym and pool, I think maybe we could. I don't know. I have to talk to them about that. Because, I mean, it's a big enough amenity space that we could have it open to the public. I just have to talk to the developers about that. Because that was something I didn't think anybody would ask. I wasn't prepared for that. So let me write it down real quick. And then, who else was here? I'll get.
So a couple of things. Obviously the place is beautiful, but I'm not in favor of it. I've lived here 27 years in the 4500 block of Arco. And yes, the neighborhood has changed a ton. And there's been a lot of really good that's happened. Anybody would say that. But it's gotten way high now. I mean, any of us who have adult kids, our kids could never buy into the neighborhood that we bought into. I mean, we need to do something about bringing back some of the people that we've gotten out in all these developments. So I think anything new, we've got enough high rises coming up all over the place. We need something, you know, short, maybe a few more for families or a 3-story or something that would take some low income folks. When you say you've got so many, you've only got a few 2 bedrooms, you've got mostly 1 bedroom and studios. Those sound like a prime low income properties. I mean, you're making it more dense, you know, it needs to be less dense and it would help with a lot of this stuff. As far as not having tax credits to make it affordable, I would think that anybody that's developing anything in this neighborhood now is making plenty. You don't need to make more. I mean, I think we're doing okay here, you know? But yeah, I don't like that at all. The parking is another thing, but anyway. Yeah, the low income piece, that's all it is.
So the low income thing, it just doesn't make economic sense without significant incentives. So people can come around here all day and say, we need more affordable housing. Great, I get it. It doesn't work financially right here.
Then you tear down
That's an option too. That's an option too. But if you don't build any more housing, the rent's only going to go up for other people because then the demand has been squashed.
We have limited time here, so we're gonna have 2 more in-person questions, and then we've got some questions from the chat of people that are attending on Zoom that we need to get to.
Hi, my name's Sarah. I live on the 4400 block of Oakland. I have a 2-part question. There's a bus stop that's right out front of the buildings, kind of right at the end of Arco. It services, I think, about 4 different bus lines. Do you know what's going to happen to that bus stop during the construction, and whether the sidewalk in front of the buildings will remain open during construction? And additionally, as something that Lux could potentially give back to the community, right now that bus stop is just a bench, and whether Lux would be willing to work with the city to create a better site there for people. Because right now Kings Highway is a little hostile, so it'd be nice to have something that kind of brings back.
So I think the approach of what I was told was for the bus stop situation, it will be moved a little bit, but there will be a box or wood thing built around it so people could still go stand there. It'll be covered for the duration of construction, but the entire sidewalk will be closed. So it's just the bus stop. So people don't have to walk 5 blocks up to get to a bus stop and they don't have to go south of there and put it in front of other people's homes. So it's staying, but that's all that'll be open on the sidewalks portion. And as far as updates to the bus stop go, I think that's a good idea. So we can make a nice little shelter, put some art on it, something nice. I'll run that by them. That sounds like a great idea. So I put that down for a little thing like that. And then I know there's been somebody raising their hand a long time over here. So I'll come over here.
In this instance, the sunrise is east to west, so it's going to change quite a bit for all of the neighbors behind this building, especially when it comes to shading. And along with, adding back into the bus stop, I do think that's a really fantastic idea. It'd be really interesting to see if a curb cut could be involved, so the bus actually has a place to pull into at the same time. And then, the biggest thing I heard you say is that you wanted to be a part of the neighborhood. How can you help us solve crime? Because 3 weeks ago, there was a shooting in front of our home that was over 100 rounds with an automatic weapon along with a bunch of other weapons. So how can we improve and have you help us in this neighborhood?
I was gonna say, well, how do you, we can't hear most of this discussion.
Use the mic.
So there were a few things there. One was a light and shading study of the sun to kind of have neighbors expect what they're going to understand and see in the future if this building is built. That's a big thing of mine. Everybody has a right to light in some form or shape. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration. In addition to the bus stop comment that Sarah mentioned, I was talking about a curb cut somewhere for the bus to actually safely pull into so that it can never be rear-ended. Cars speed along Kings Highway and there's no way to really control that in any particular fashion. But the other thing was in regards to crime, how can you help us and be a part of this neighborhood? With the shooting that happened in front of our home 3 weeks ago, with 100 rounds being shot off, it was on News Channel 4 a few times now. And, numbers are skewed a little bit and they say 136% the crime is up in this area. That's a great place to start because I don't know how you expect to get tenants within this building if the crime is there.
I think this would have to be a very, very community-centered approach. More community policing would be one, and we would have to meet with everybody who's involved in that, neighborhood security people, and then maybe on our end, just to help out a little bit, we could put a lot of security cameras on, but that only does so much. So this approach to helping to fix crime would probably have to be a very community-centered thing, much more in tune for a community policing thing to hopefully reduce crime, especially to prevent incidences like you said, which are not. That's not how our city should be viewed by outsiders. We have enough of that. So we need to work on the crime. See, I agree with you. That would be a great thing to do. So we need to work together. I think it's a big thing that everybody needs to work together. Yeah. So we need to get some ideas going. And then the bus curb, and that would be I think that's reasonable ask. There's enough setback on this project that would allow that. So I'm not saying it's not impossible. It can be done, certainly. And then a light shade study, I think that some architect may have done, but he's not here, so I can't ask him that. Yeah, we'll be able to get it for the next one, the light and shading study. So, yeah.
I'm going to take a few questions here from Zoom. One here from Audrey M. Another concern I have that the current design is quite bland, does not have the character of the neighborhood. This looks the same as 10 buildings in Central West End. So I guess can you address the design choices that don't necessarily reflect the brick housing stock of the neighborhood?
So with the material colors, and just overall colors of the building, I don't think materials will change much, but we can look into that. I think we could play into it, maybe get more of like a brown and red mix to match the neighborhoods for colors a bit instead of gray and white. That's something I'll have to ask the architect about and relay those comments to the developer because ultimately the developer decides what colors will go onto this building. So to answer that question, I'll look into it and hopefully by the next meeting we have something that looks better for many more people.
Another question I have here, where were the construction workers park their vehicles?
So initially, during the construction phase, they will park on the street, but once the underground garage is built, all the construction workers will park in there, because that's a precast garage. So at that point, once that garage is complete, which I think would be about a 2-month span, maybe 2.5. After that, then the rest of the construction, all the workers will then use the garage on site to get their cars off the street. So that's how that would work. That's a similar way that was done at the Hudson down at Pershing and Oliver, which is another Lux project.
That's completely unfeasible. It absolutely, you have to have a business plan. Right, I mean, I'm just saying, like, they literally, even if none of us parked on the street, they literally would not be able to park their cars, even if nobody else parked there. There's not enough room. Yeah.
I don't know where we're gonna park it.
We'll have to look at that. Right.
Yeah, we don't know, we don't know that.
Yeah, everyone, somebody, we're not opposed to that. I mean, we just.
We're just, that's one of the things that if one of our construction guys is here, he'd be able to explain that a bit better. Because that's one of the things I didn't expect.
Just a couple more questions here really quickly. Can you please describe the decision to make the building the height 6 stories? I think we touched upon it a little already, but is it economically feasible for 3 or 4 stories?
Again, no. It's at this height because the amount of units that we can get in the building makes it financially work. We build something that's 45 units here in a 3-floor building or 50 or so. The cost to demolish, build out a parking garage underground, come back up and do this, the rent just doesn't work. You have to go more. So you can say no, you can doubt that all you want, but until you do the economics yourself, I don't want to hear it. That's the 5th time I've answered that question tonight, and people don't seem to understand it. What is the thing? What's the target rent? Whatever the average of the neighborhood is. Look at what's going on in the neighborhood. Excuse me. Look at what's going on in the rest of the neighborhood. Look at Chroma. See what's going on at Chroma and Hugh. That's what it's going to be down there. I guarantee it 100%.
That area, they're not even variance. You're already cleared it. The tree, 16 stories, the reason we have the base. They're within it. So being 6 stories, it's still a story less than what is allowed. So they are, so that isn't, you know, they can go 6 stories, 7 stories. It's anywhere between 3 and 7 stories, but that must be stretched.
That's all the questions. That's all the questions we have on Zoom.
About up to where the stairs go up now on those buildings. So the setback is retained. The setback is retained. Yes.
And they'll need to be repaid. And that comes out of our working capital dollars, and we would prefer to use those elsewhere. So we LuxLiving have discussions about things maybe.
I certainly think that's valid. I mean, I can go by it. I'm pretty. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a simple ask to repave the streets. So, yeah, so I think that could be done easily. Yeah. Just have to be done in partnership with everybody. So everybody knows what's going on. So, yeah. Similar to like what Green Street's doing, right? Similar to that.
Well, at this time, in terms of this proposal and everything else, what I need is your community input, which you're giving right now. And then once I get all that community input, we'll be looking and summarizing that and bringing this back to you, is it October? And giving it to the developers to make the changes necessary. I'm right now just listening to you all because this is your community and how you would like to have it
to be, to keep it, to make it better, etc. I will weigh in, but right now it's too early.
That's all the time we have for tonight. This week we'll make tonight's recording of the meeting and presentation available. And then on Tuesday, October 19th, we plan to have a second meeting to have a larger discussion about what was presented tonight and make community recommendations, again, as a community, and provide those to Alderwoman Tina Sweet Peel, who can provide those her recommendations to LuxLiving on a revised proposal.
Will the developer or third party use effective non-violent talking to us in the neighborhood?
We do hope to have the developers here next week and as well as any other, or next month, as well as any other members related to the development.
It would make sense. Wherever. Wish to pick up like land.
They say they have.
Right. They have.
Yeah.
Not that you just have.
Yeah. To share more feedback, you can go to this bit.ly link right here, which is FPSENA-XLUX, Forest Park Southeast Neighborhood Association XLUX. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. Hope it was helpful. I'll catch you guys next month. If you're interested in joining the board, nominations are upcoming. So see a board member. Thanks, guys.